I think that we should all understand as adults that milk is a substance which is naturally produced by the female of any mammal species after she has given birth. And by nature, this liquid is the perfectly designed food for the offspring. Now, what will naturally happen is that over time, the baby, the newborn, will gradually take less and less milk and eat more and more of the same kind of foods that the mother will be eating, until such point where the milk is fully abandoned and the offspring is eating exactly the same foods as his mother. Now, at this point in time, out there in nature, what happens is that from that point onwards, that child, that offspring, will never ever again drink milk throughout the entirety of his or her life. And this is something which is perfectly normal, because once you've left that stage of being an infant and fully dependent on the mother's milk, we no longer have any need for milk. That is truth undeniable, that can be witnessed everywhere. And there are thousands of different species of mammals out there in the planet, and every single one of them follows this pattern of once they're weaned, that's it, they're weaned. They don't suddenly go back and start taking milk again. They're weaned. They're over it. It's gone. That part of the stage is left behind, and they no longer have that requirement. Now, the only species on the planet who feels that this isn't actually right, that we should be carrying on with milk even after we're babies, is the human species. Now, I think if you really examine this, you'll realize just how bizarre it is. Because if you're walking along the street and you happen to see a 10-year-old boy walking along with his mother, and the boy says suddenly, "Oh, Mum, I'm hungry," and the mother takes her breast out and gives it to her son, and the son starts to drink milk from the mother's breast, onlookers, people that are around, they're going to be flabbergasted. They won't know what to think. They'll think, their immediate reaction will be, this is so incredibly perverse. How can the mother be doing this? What's going on there? This isn't right. You know, they'll be wanting to get authorities involved because they just feel like this cannot possibly be right, what they're doing. And yet if that same boy is walking along the street and he's got a glass of milk in his hand and he's sucking it through a straw, nobody's going to bat an eyelid. Nobody's going to think, oh, that's, you know, something wrong with that, or that's perverse, or whatever, you know. Nobody's going to care. They're just going to think that's normal, because that's the way they've been conditioned to think. They've been conditioned not to question. That's the way were conditioned. You know, we were all brought up to not really question it. We were, probably it's the case that most of us, at least the vast majority of us, were not brought up vegan. We were brought up eating all kinds of animal products, including dairy, and never thought to question it. In fact, we were told that it was a healthy thing to be doing. We were told that it was a health food and that it was for our own benefit to be drinking that. So they won't be questioning it at all. But if you really look at what's going on there, and you kind of like cut out the middlemen and everything going on in between, it's almost like that child is drinking from the nipple of the cow. Now, if you were to witness that, instead of a glass of milk in a straw, you would be scratching your head and thinking, hey, what's going on there? You know, why is that child right underneath that cow there? That you would think twice before just accepting that this is a normal thing for that boy to be doing. What you have to realize is that we, just like every other species, once we've left behind that stage of being an infant, we don't need milk, and we certainly don't need milk from an entirely different species. Now, why they've picked on and chosen the cow is probably because the cow is an incredibly peaceful creature, and it's one of the most easy to exploit, because they're not aggressive in general. They are these beings which are easy for us to manipulate and do with as we wish, but that doesn't make it right. It could have been any other species that was chosen and marketed to us. Somebody could have, for example, chosen horses and said, look, you need horse milk, and found a good way to market it and sell it to us. What we have to understand is that there's nothing whatsoever within milk which we need as an adult, or even as children. Once we've left that stage, there's absolutely nothing within milk. In fact, there are many things within milk which are not going to do us any good. Not talking about so much about hormones and things that are residues from this big agribusiness which is going on, but just in the milk itself, there's things like casein. Casein is a highly addictive substance, or said to be, at least. If you do some research about it, you'll find out, which is why some people find it extremely difficult to give up cheese, because cheese contains a lot of casein, and casein is like you want more and more of it once you're hooked on it. You have to go cold turkey, really, leave it behind, because it's not doing you any good. There's also, it's said to be the case that I think 50% of the world are lactose intolerant, which really goes to show that it's not a food that we should be eating. You know, it's not something that we need. What we need to do is adopt or find the ability to think past our conditioning and realize that this food is not something which any of us are benefiting from taking. In fact, if you look further beyond our own simple diets and our own well-beings and start looking towards where it comes from, you realize that there's an awful lot of harm that's going on, and an awful lot of stuff that's going on that you probably wouldn't be supportive of if you really understood what was happening. Now, for starters, if you go and look, you'll find out that in order to produce the milk, just like every other species, the cow must become pregnant. And this is generally done, they're force impregnated on something which the industry calls a rape rack, where the cow is confined in a little stool and has injected within it bull semen. So in most cases, the bull isn't even present. The bull has been, for want of a better word, milked until the semen has been caught in a cup or put into a syringe, where it eventually gets placed into the cows. And when the cow's baby is born, he or she will suffer. Well, if it's a he, it will likely be taken away within days or hours even, and ends up being fattened for the veal industry, and will end up being sold as veal, chopped up and sold as veal. If it's a female, she too will be separated from the mother. There's always this separation. You have to have this separation. If there wasn't any separation, the milk, they wouldn't be able to produce enough milk for the demands of the public. So either the male is taken away and fattened up to become veal, or the female is taken away and she suffers exactly the same fate as the mother, where she's then put aside. They help her to get mature as quickly as possible, so that she herself can be forced pregnant and start producing milk from an early age as possible. And once the mother who is producing the milk has gone through this maybe 3 or 4 or 5 times at the most, she will be basically spent and considered by the industry to be no longer of any value, because she's not producing enough milk anymore, and at that stage she'll likely be killed, because what's the point of keeping a cow unless you can make a profit from her? That's the way the industry looks at these things. That's what's going on. All mammals have a very, very strong bonding with their children or child. As soon as the child is born, the offspring is born, there's this incredible love bond between animals. And once we come along as humans and separate them, it creates this huge trauma within their hearts. The mother will cry for days on end, sometimes even weeks, for losing the mother. So when you go out in the country and you hear a cow bellowing, it's not because she's having fun. It's more likely because she's just lost her child. We need to start caring, because once we address our heart and go within and kind of recognize what it is we're doing, we have to understand that caring is the only solution. I'm just trying to encourage people to follow their hearts, because they know in their hearts what's right and what's wrong.